Hey, good afternoon. It is afternoon, last day. So how is everybody's TC so far? Can we do a little bit better than that? The party last night, all the cool things you're going to see today and you've seen all this week. Well, my name's John, and I wanted to just kind of start off by giving you kind of what's going to happen in the next hour. So first of all, thank you for coming. I mean, I know it's hopefully at the end of this session, you'll leave here with a new tool in your toolbox that maybe you didn't know about or you didn't know a lot about. So first question is, how many of you guys actually have used regular expressions? Whoa, okay. Well, that's a good thing. So hopefully, you'll learn something here. We're going to give you a good overview, a baseline overview for those that are being introduced to the subject for the first time. But we'll give you some details as we go along. And then we'll shift about 20 minutes into the presentation. We'll shift over to a live demo. And I've got several use cases that I'll be showing today to give you some ideas that you can take back with you on how regular expressions might be able to up your game from a Tableau perspective. So David and I are both from Dallas, Texas. Anybody from Dallas? Woo-woo! Anybody from Texas? All right, we'll take Texas too. So good, cool things there. So I have the privilege of introducing you to David. So David has been with Tableau for over 5 years. He's been in this industry for 20. He has been a great mentor to me. He's presented this subject for the last couple of years, so it's been kind of fun collaborating with him on this particular subject. But in addition to his day job at Tableau, David's done something that I'm really in awe of and I'm trying to do myself, and that is that David is debt-free. So David has no credit cards, no debt. I mean, he bought his last Lexus with cash, okay? So if you don't know, David, kind of subscribes and actually teaches the Dave Ramsey method and stuff like that. But David and I have had a fun time kind of talking about how I get to be like him with no credit cards because I got lots of credit cards, and how I can buy a car with cash and all that kind of stuff like that. But anyway, without going on anymore, I want to kind of hand you over to David, and David's going to start us off.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the wonderful world of unleashing unexpected information from complex data. Today, John and I are going to try to take a kind of an approach that is maybe a little bit creative, hopefully, to take a subject that otherwise might be a little bit dry. We're going to try to liven it up a little bit. And this is the obligatory slide, and I had to title the session a certain way so that you would know what this would be about. But if I were going to do it in another way, this is probably the slide I would start with. And we're going to take this creative approach and show you how to consume and digest complex, unstructured data. And as you'll find out, Tableau leverages this relatively ancient relic to regular expressions to unearth information that maybe wasn't accessible to you in the past. I'm going to start off with one of the most difficult things for me. This is a problem for me. How many of you have parked your car in a parking lot and walked out and have no idea where your car is? All right? One of my worst nightmares. So you can imagine when I decided to park my car here, what a problem this caused for me. Now, this is an actual parking solution, and in this, I want you to give me some help. Maybe you could help me find my red Cadillac there as you're searching. Now, I'm not going to let you go on too long because I don't even know where it is on there. But that would really be difficult to be able to find that just using the tools that we already have, right? But fortunately, this is a parking solution that actually exists. It's a company called Ultronics Parking Solutions, and they have these parking solutions in New York, New Jersey, California, Tel Aviv, Mexico City, and they actually have technology that helps you. So you pull your car in, You keep the keys, you go do whatever you're going to do, you come back, they find the car, pull the car down, turn it around for you, you get in your car and you drive off. And that's all because they get the technology to find it very fast, even though you and I probably couldn't do that. So today we're going to go through how we would do that with data. We're going to be discussing a little bit of the syntax of regular expressions for those people who aren't aware of what regular expressions really are, because we have a lot of Tableau users who'd like to use it and have never touched regular expressions. And then we're going to implement it. So today in that process, I'm going to have, in line with my theme, my little friend Rexton is going to help us every once in a while draw attention to some things that are important. So data often is like doing an excavation. You know, when somebody does an excavation, they have no idea where to start often and how you separate the dirt from the valuable relics. How do you make that happen? And so doing things to unstructured data is very much the same way. Now we know that Tyrannosaurus Rex was the most powerful, efficient meat eater of all time. He took down and consumed anything in his path. And of course, T-Rex doesn't exist anymore, but archaeologists have tools to be able to uncover things, and we've learned a lot about T-Rex just because of the tools they've used to be able to find out information that we wouldn't have known in the past. So enter our tool, the tool I call Tableausaurus Regex, the marriage of Tableau and the power of regular expressions. So first of all, let's discuss what regular expressions are anyway. Now, regular expressions have been around since the 50s. They were created by a mathematician named Stephen Kleene, where he wanted to be able to create a set of codes that will allow you to find patterns and search for text and those types of things. And those have been available for databases and languages and those structures for a long time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of that in Tableau. Now, Tableau looks at a specific standard, and if you really care, I've written it down here. It's the ICU Unicode Technical Standard number 18 Unicode Regular Expressions Level 1, and there's a few more things. So if you're interested, that is the standard, and it's a common standard out there, but that's the standard that Tableau uses. So what does that mean? So regular expressions allow us to be able to do searches for text, allow us to look for patterns in data so that we don't have to know exactly what the text is, but there's a pattern, and if we know what that pattern is, we can extract that information out. And I call it a wild card on steroids. So you know, on my Windows machine, if I go to my Windows machine, I can go to the search at the bottom. I can start typing in something, and it automatically, through the index, finds out exactly where all those documents are that may have any of those things that I typed. And I can use wildcards and those types of things. Very easy to be able to find almost anything just because I have the right tool. So why should you care? Well, number one, it's going to allow you to be able to attack unstructured data and get information out of it that maybe you've never been able to gain before. It's going to save you massive amounts of time. You see, in Tableau, you have the ability to create formulas, and in a long string, you could probably create a really complex formula to find certain things if you really wanted to, but it would be time-consuming, it would be complex, and it would be hard to do. And most of all, it's going to make you a data hero. You're going to uncover insight that was there all along that your organization may have never known about. And that's important. So you're going to be able to do things like access information from scrubbing websites or customer comments, log files, those types of things, machine data, looking at social media to find out trends in social media, those things that are very complex where there are these little nuggets all over the place that maybe it was difficult to access before. So let's start off with a sample for those people who want to learn a little bit about regular expressions. And this is going to be just a general sample. Let's say we're looking for address in a 3,000 character field, but we're looking for something that is an address, and these are the requirements that we're looking for, at least in this example. There's not going to be a suite number. It's going to be, the number is going to be less than or equal to 5 characters. The name of the street is going to be one word, and then it's going to have street or avenue after it. And that's the pattern that we're looking for. That happens to be our address in Austin for the Tableau office, if you're ever there. And this is what the regular expression would look like. Now, if you've never used regular expressions, that may be a little bit daunting. So I'm going to give you a little technique that kind of helps. What we do is we want to break things into little pieces, and it'll start to make sense. So if we look at that this way, and we'll talk about the detail of what this means in a minute, this is saying I want to look for a digit or a number that's 1 to 5 characters. Then I know that there's going to be a space. Then there's going to be an alphanumeric character, and I don't know how long that's going to be. Then there's going to be another space. Then there's going to be another word, which is what the W stands for. And then there's going to be a period, and that's what I'm looking for. All right, so if I haven't lost you so far, that's just the example. Let's talk about some basic principles. So let's talk about some of the basics that if you just know these basics of regular expressions, they will give you the power to extract a lot of information. So if you have anything that you decide to put a -D, you can think of that as digit, that's where the D came from. That is any number, right? So in any position, that will be any number that may be there. If it's a capital D, that's anything but a number. A \S that we saw is a space. \S is anything but a space. A \W is any alphanumeric character, zeros or letters. Go ahead and tell me what's next. Capital W, anything but alphanumeric. See, this is not too hard. A period basically means anything at all except for a line break in a particular position. And then, Rexton's going to help us with this. If I use the period, that means anything. That means that if I'm looking for a period, I have to do something to tell the language that I'm looking for a period. So I put a \/ before it to tell me that that's the case. All right, so let's look at repeating characters. So anytime you look at a regular expression, you're looking at every position in this pattern. You're starting with the beginning position and you're defining it, and then you're moving to the next position and you're defining that, and you may want to repeat some of those characters. So let's say, for instance, there's a person sitting at their desk and they're wanting to do a direct mail merge to everybody named Charles, and in the data we know we have a first and a last name, but we don't care what the last name is, but we know that the pattern needs to be a first and a last name, and we want to send a mail to everyone named Charles. Well, this is how it would look. We could actually type the letters that we're looking for, and regular expressions will pick that up. So this is Charles with a space, and then a word, and then a repetitive tool. The plus means 0 or more, or 1 or more, one or more of those, and then another space. So we know that somewhere in a long string, it's going to have this pattern. So we've talked about some of the simple ways to define a particular character. This is the way you can tell that it's repeating. So the plus would mean 1 or more of whatever was before. A question mark means 0 or more. It may or may not, or 0 or 1. It may be there or it may not in one position. Asterisk is 0 or more repetitions, and you're going to see more of this when John does his demo. And then sometimes, Rexton is going to help us with this, we want to define exactly how many of that character we want. And so we can define that. In this case, the \d is a digit. We're looking for a number that's going to be 10 characters long. Maybe a phone number or something, right? We know that it's going to be 10 characters exactly. Sometimes, though, there may need to have a range. So we do a repetition range by putting it in braces, and we say, now we're looking for something, and it's going to be a number that is between 2 and 15. It may be 7 and it may be 11. We don't know, but we know the pattern is looking for that, and if we find that, that's what we want. So just with those two tools, you're going to have a lot of power. So let's talk about reserved words. We already talked about if we're actually looking for a period, and that's a character already in this language. We need to define it, so there are some of those characters that we need to think about. We're going to use it, let's say we're looking for a currency, and some of those characters are in there. So what you see in red is a $sign is one of those. So we're looking for a $sign. We're looking for a number, and it may be 0 or more dollars. That's why we put the asterisk on there. Then we're actually looking for a period, so that by itself would mean anything, right? So if we put the \, on there, we know that it's a period. And when John shows this will all make sense. And then 2 digits after that. So some of those codes are these. So any parentheses or brackets or braces, you've already seen the asterisk. Anything that is used in the language already, you need to do. So if you're practicing and you're trying something on a regular expression and it's not picking it up the way you want, it's picking up the wrong thing, you may consider the fact that maybe it's a reserved word. Try putting a \, before it. All right, so let's pull this together. How do we extract information? Because often we are looking for a pattern, and the pattern includes more than what we want to extract. Okay, so in this situation, we're looking for a state, Nevada, but we may find another word somewhere else that matches what we're looking for. But we know that we're going to have a state with a space, or one or more spaces, possibly, and then a zip code, which is going to be a 5-character number, and that's going to tell us where to find that. But all we want is the state when we do that. So it looks something like this. We're telling it there would be a space before that. There's going to be a capital N, or it could be a lowercase n. There is going to be some set of letters that would possibly include N, E, V, A, and D, and it could be a capital V or a lowercase v as part of our pattern. And it's going to be 2 to 6 characters long, then a space, and then 5 numbers. So the parentheses is how we do the extract. So in Tableau, when we're writing the regular expression, whatever you put in parentheses is whatever value we're trying to extract out of the data. So you're going to put parentheses around it. So you'll see that when John does that. So some of those defining codes, how we talk about a specific position. Remember, everything is in a position. So in a specific position, if we're looking for a lowercase letter and an uppercase letter, we would give it a range of lowercase a through z and uppercase a through z. That's in one position. Then we can use a repeater after that and say, okay, I'm going to see 1 or more, I'm going to see 5, I'm going to see 10 to 17, whatever we decide with our repeater. With numbers, we say 0 through 9. Or if you know that your number is 5 through 9, you're going to put 5 through 9 there, right? Or if it doesn't include the 0, you're going to put 1 through 9. And then we can mix and match those. So in this position, for this example, we're saying that in some character that we're looking for, it's probably a machine code of some kind, there's going to be a capital A through F, there's going to be a lowercase h through s, some character along that, and either a 0, 1, 2, or 3 in that specific space. And remember, we can actually type out exactly what we're looking for, but we have to pull that exact out. We put parentheses around that to give it that focus for what we want to extract. So, finally, there are 4 formulas in Tableau that work with regular expressions, and these are the 4. Basically, you use these formulas. You take a field that you already have in Tableau. That's your first position in your formula. And then after that, you put the regular expressions in quotes. And so regular expressions extract says whatever happens to be, not quotes, parentheses. Whatever is in the parentheses, I want this calculated field to have that value. If there are 5 of those patterns in my long string, and maybe I want the third one that shows up, the third instance that shows up, that's where I would use my nth. If I'm writing some logic that says, hey, I just want to know when I find a match for this, and then I'm going to do some other logic, we're not actually extracting the data, we just want to know true or false, did we match it? That's when we would use the match. And then we use the replace if we wanted to go through and maybe we have certain data that we want to go and say, okay, if it says any one of these patterns, I want it to automatically be forced to this. So for instance, if people are doing a free-form state field and they can write it in many different ways, maybe we want to make sure that it becomes capitalized or something like that and is a standard format. So, test time. Time for a quiz. If I were looking for this text, it's going to be multiple choice, so it'll be easier. If I were looking for this specific text, which one of these would I use? Would I use that one? B? Or C? So I'll let you think about that for a minute. How many people said A? You got an A back there. What about B? Got a few more there. C? Okay. Well, guess what? You are all right. Each one of these would pull back what you want, but one would do a better job of it. That would be B. Okay? So the \W, 11 characters, that is exactly 11 characters, would pull back any string I had that had 11 characters in it, alphanumeric. And it would get Vegas in 2017. It would also get last year's, Austin, in 2016, right? So it would pull back the wrong thing if that's exactly what I'm looking for. C would also pick it up, but it also, if for some reason I had something that said vegans for world peace, it would pick that up too, right? So in this case, we're actually going to type it out exactly like it is because we know exactly what that text will be in this case. So that's enough about regular expressions. That should give you a little primer about how regular expressions work. So when John shows his examples, it will kind of make sense if you haven't used them before. So I'm going to have John come up on the stage. John works with me in Dallas. He has several hobbies, including sailing. He loves to travel. He's been all over the world for work. And one of the things he likes to do is photography. And he finds that when he does photography, he's told me that as he's looking through the lens, often he will take snapshots of things and he will find things that he never expected. Very much like regular expressions, right? So that's why John is the great person to show you how you might use regular expressions.
All right, David. Okay, and yes, that was a picture I didn't expect. That was London on maybe my 11th or 12th time to London. Anybody in here from London? Oh, shoot. Okay. Anyway, was walking down the street. I like to shoot HDR and lots of kind of architectural type stuff. And I took a picture. A lot of times I've gotten to where I don't look in the camera until I get home. And I was looking at this, and I dressed it up in color, and I thought it was kind of cool. I converted it to black and white, and I thought it was kind of cool. And then I was like, what if I layered it in Photoshop and colored in the red? So, and like David said, I think regular expressions is a lot like that. If you're into photography, when you go manual, you get all the control on the camera. You get to decide depth of field and stuff like that. So that's really what I'm hoping you'll take away here with the regular expressions. So let's start. Now, I'm going to try to use a magnifying glass here to help you out. So that's not too bad. I think you guys can do that. So here's my first question. I'm looking at this data, and this data that I'm going to start with is Google Analytic data. So I don't know if you've ever dealt with Google Analytics, but Google Analytics can gather tons of information about people, where they click, what they're clicking on, if you're running an ad campaign, what websites you're being referred from, what locations, things of that nature. And so that's what we're going to start with, is we're going to start with a real-life example of how I could actually use regular expressions to extract out lots of details to do something with. So here's my first question. Who in here would use regular expressions for this? I want to split all this out and get a geography layout, because if you look at it, the first level is maybe a region, the next level is like a sub-region or something, then I get down to a city, and then I get down to a zip code and a state. Anybody in here would start off writing a regular expression in here? You would, okay. I would actually use, who else, what would you use in Tableau to make this even easier? Split, okay, absolutely. So one of the first things to understand is that as you learn regular expressions, it doesn't become your new shiny toolkit that you use all the time. You use it where it makes sense. And so for this particular field, I can go to campaign name, and I can, of course, right-click on it, and I can go over here to transform, and I can do a split. And of course, now I've got all my fields out there if I brought them in here, and I've already renamed them in my other data set. But you can see how just simply doing that split, I got something. Now, could I have done that in regular expressions? Absolutely, because I know the pipe would have given me the delimiter in that. But I don't want to write a regular expression where Tableau has made it very helpful for us. Another thing that you might look at, and we'll talk about a bit later, is the contains function. We'll talk about where maybe you'd use contains instead of match and stuff like that. All right, so I've taken my first step. I've divided out all this stuff, and you'll see this in the final dashboard I go to. But now I actually do want to dive into a regular expression. And let me turn on my little magnifying glass up here and see if this helps us. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. And so you actually can see that this is the data I get back from Google Analytics. I get some things that say things like content equals emergency, offer equals emergency, UTM source is Google, as in where did we get there, what's the median, what's the campaign, and maybe some other code factors here, keywords and things of that nature. This is a great use case for regular expressions because I can basically dig up and uncouple this into dimensions that I can now use in trying to figure out more about how a particular Google Analytics situation is going. So let me do this and see if I can. Let me turn off my little magnifying glass because it gets me confused here for a second. And let me go to median. And I guess what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start typing. You guys tell me if you can see this okay. If you can't, I'll try to blow it up or something. But basically, I'm going to start off with a regular expression, and I'm going to do an extract. Then at this point, I want to actually look at where is this particular information. So I've actually got a field in here called query 1. So query 1 is what I'm going to use. And I'm going to actually use my thing here and type in query. You'll see I've got my query 1 field. And now I want to start building my regular expression. So for this particular pattern, I want to understand that UTM medium field and do something with it. So I'm actually going to start typing. I'll use my single quotes, and I'll type in UTM underscore me. And I promise I'm not going to actually type out all the regular expressions we see today, but I think it's helpful. You see me build one or two. and then we'll decouple them while we're in Tableau. And in that format, if you look above, it says equals right up here, if you can see that, hopefully. And then, like David said, I'm now going to put parentheses around what I want to extract. So I'm going to actually do a parentheses here, and I'm going to do a bracket, and I'm going to say that I want A through Z, kind of like how David showed you earlier, and A through Z, okay? And then I'm going to do a close bracket, and then I'm going to go ahead and close out my parentheses. Oops. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a wrapper there, and it says my calculation is valid. I'm going to go ahead and apply it. And I do that, and then I'm going to go over here to median. I'm going to drag this over. Oops, come on. Okay, what happened? Anybody can tell what I did or what I missed? I missed one character. Anybody know what the character was I missed? Plus, absolutely. So if I go back here to median, come back over here, I'll edit it. Simply add the plus at the right place, which is after the brackets, but still within the capture of the area there. Apply that, say okay, and now I've got actually my information. So let's look at some others, and we're going to drill into these. I'm just going to open them up and stuff. So the next one I want to actually look at is content. And if I go look at content and edit that, you'll see that this one is set up very similar. Regular expression, query, content equals, I'm capturing A through Z, and now I've added a number in here, and I'm actually saying I want everything in there because I know that content may actually have a number in there. So I'm actually pulling out all that information. So very similar to the one I just did. I'm using a different tag to find that information. So let's go to one that's a little bit more interesting, and let's go to offer name. Okay, offer name. Wow, I've got some new, something new that I can actually play with here. So looking at query 1, and within query 1, I actually now have that up caret, and that actually means, anybody in the audience know what the up caret means? David didn't cover it in his slides. Beginning, yeah. So it begins with that equal sign, and then I've got a plus after it, and then close my quotes out here, and then the last part of it is ampersand offer. So I don't want the ampersand offer. I just want the information here that says with this equal sign and that information there. Okay? And then I think the last one I wanted to show you guys was source.
You going to drag them out onto the screen there?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That's what offer looks like. That's what content looks like. And the last one we'll look at is source. So, of course, all these are Google from that perspective. Same thing. Go edit here. You'll look, again, a little bit. I started adding some notes in here because what we will do is somehow we'll find a way to publish this workbook for you guys to get. I'll either publish it up to public myself, or I think if you log back on after the conference to the TC website, you'll be able to get our PowerPoint and you'll be able to get the workbook. So anyway, so this one's just a little bit different, but basically same concept. I'm looking at the source, equal sign, and then my capture is what's in the parentheses, A through Z, unlimited characters, ampersand is where it's next to, and then I want to end at that point. All right, so what can I do with this data? So I've broken apart some Google Analytic data, I've broken apart some geographic information that was not made available to me in a structured format. Well, what can I do? So let's just kind of look here real quick, and this is just straight Tableau here. So at this point, I can actually, I thought I'd turned on my background map, so I'll just go ahead and do Tableau here since I do have an internet connection. I wasn't sure I'd have an internet connection. And so at this point, I could actually come back over here. I'll see the map information. I'm not sure why it's not drawing the way I expected it, but you can kind of tell that's sort of the United States there. What's a demo if you don't have one little goof up there? Then the other is I begin to want to take a look at a dual axis. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at impressions versus what I pay per click. So if you're familiar with the way internet marketing works, when you run an ad campaign, you're paying per click. And so depending on what you're doing, if you're doing a special ad buy, stuff like that, your pays per clicks are a little bit cheaper. You get more clicks, it's a little bit cheaper, and that information. So what I'm able to do is to actually have my little dashboard, but then now, because I've separated out that offer information, I can actually filter this information here if I wanted to look at different ad campaigns. I can see what the effect was of the ad campaign. So when I actually added and did a very specific campaign, and then you can actually see that my click percentage went way down, but my actual impressions went way up. And I was able to get all that just by mining Google Analytic data. So if you are not aware, people are doing this every day. They're buying tools to do it. But you can do it in Tableau, and you could marry this with other things that you may be having going on from a marketing perspective. So let's actually move to another data set and take a look at something else. So as David said, one of the things that is really good for regular expressions is free-form fields. So the wild, wild west doesn't have any structure to this data. And that could be a survey. In fact, before last night, we actually posted an up-to-date list of all your survey comments. So again, if you don't think they ever get looked at, they actually get looked at, and sometimes they get looked at before people like me and David presented, because I wanted to see what mistakes other people were making, so I didn't make them today. But in that comment field, there's a lot in there. So what I was doing was I went out and I looked at, and I found a data set that has about 7 to 8 years worth of consumer complaint information that went to the FTC. And so what this is, it's got about 890 rows, almost 900,000 rows. And what's interesting to me is the customer narrative field. And when you look at this data set, there's just tons of stories, especially in light of what we talked about with Iron Viz yesterday with the housing bubble and everything like that. There's tons of complaints against mortgage companies and all those reasons why I want to be debt-free and stuff like that. So the first thing I want to look at is I want to look at the fact that within this data set, I might have some phone numbers. That's a fairly common thing if you were doing survey data. Somebody might leave you their phone number. Well, if they leave you your phone number in a fairly free-form field, it's probably a good indication they want somebody to call them. So it'd be a great way for you to be able to do that. And so what I actually did was, and if you could figure out that phone numbers could be really kind of confusing, I actually had, let me kind of pull all this over here for just a second. I'll pull over complaint ID, and then I'm going to say add all members. I'm going to go ahead and pull over the product, which I've already put in a layout. The next ones are actually built out for us, so it'd be a little bit faster. And this is prior to hyper. Hyper. Where's hyper when I need hyper? All right, there it is. And then it'll all go pretty quick from here. So I'm going to pull out product. That's a hierarchical field. There's actually a product and a subproduct. Then I'm going to pull out this free-formed field, which is customer narrative. And that'll be kind of fun to build here.
The A lot of complaints.
Wait until I show you the viz. I did something really cool with the viz. But while this is building, you know what? I'm going to flip over and I'm going to, just in the interest of time, I'm going to come back after that builds out. I'm going to hit cancel here. And like a good cooking show, I should have had one already ready to go. Not really sure why. There we go. Actually, I'm going to go here and pause updates and bring everything over I need. Product, and then customer complaint narrative, and then I'm going to bring over phone number multiple. And let that build for a second. Now, what I did was, the government did a pretty good job of scrubbing out the data in this narrative field. There's lots of X's in there, so addresses aren't in there. Actually, phone numbers weren't in there. What was in there, which I thought was interesting, was people wrote the financial impact of their complaint. So there's some numbers in there that I thought was pretty interesting, which we'll get to here in just a second. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to show you how I would extract out from a phone number perspective. So let me do this in the interest of, because I want to make sure we get through to everything. There are a lot of complaints. The free-form field's pretty big. So while this is coming back to me, are there any questions up to this point? I'm just going to stop for a second, because when in doubt, you always ask for questions if you're in my business and you get into a time lag from that perspective. So is there any questions to this point? Yeah? That's actually a great question. And actually what I ended up doing was, and I'm going to show you my expression here.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, if you're looking for, say, common patterns, do you Google it first? And ideally, you get really good with regular expressions so that you can kind of format it yourself. But there are resources out there that will say, this is the pattern you want to use. Now, in honesty, as I was learning regular expressions, I actually would find some of those, and I'd find that they weren't written very efficiently. And then when I'd actually look at the expression, I would say, hey, I could do something else here from this perspective. And that's not good. We're going to force quit Tableau. You know, this is David and I's life. This happens a lot sometimes. All right. And I'm going to go back into my Dropbox. I apologize for this. TC.
I just wanted to see if you could talk about like computational costs between regex, string calculations, and like the custom split, like which costs more as far as time is concerned?
Yeah, it's a good question. The question is, what are the computational costs of using regular expressions as opposed to string expressions and those types of things? Regular expressions often are fairly efficient. So when Tableau issues a regular expression, for the data sources that it uses, it actually pushes that logic down to the database and lets the database do the regular expression for it, right? So it doesn't bring back the data and do that. So when it does a split, it actually has to do a it actually has to do logic, create SQL, have it go parse it out in the SQL database, and then bring it back. So regular expressions happen as fast as the database can do those regular expressions. So if it's a massive amount of data, just in general, trying to do that, you don't have an index, so it could take a little bit of time to bring back that data if you were going to do that. Hopefully that answered your question. Are we up and running?
Yeah, I think we're about to be back where we want to be. Okay. Da, 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 da. All right, you know what? We're going to move on. I'm going to show you something else. I'm not sure why we crashed and burned on that one, but if we have time during Q&A, I'll see if I can't bring it back up. So,
yeah, and so when John did that one, he had to take into account that an address may be parentheses with a space and a dash. It may be periods, maybe dots between them, because people do that sometimes now, or dashes between them. And so the logic that he had to create had to account for all of those things and pull out a phone number and not pull out a Social Security number, right? So the amount of numbers that are in a Social Security number with dashes would be 2 in the middle, and of course a phone number would be 3 for the exchange. So those are the things that he had to account for. Yeah, like a date, something like a date, you'd have to find out, make sure that you do that. So that's where sometimes you use the text before and after to help you find, that phone number at times.
okay, so let's move on. In the interest of time, stop it. Okay, so let's talk about the next way you might use regular expressions. So, and actually you can go do this one with Superstore if you want to. And so a lot of times you have things that might be products that are packaged. They'll say 100 per package or 10 per box. Another good common use case would be things that you do with pharmaceutical data from that perspective, so being able to understand dosages and being able to extract those out. A lot of times those would be even within structured data. And so you'll actually see here, and this is actually what I wanted to show you with the number one, which was that we actually extracted this, but we wrapped it in an integer field. So you actually can see that we extract out the fact that we want to know that this is a set of digits, and it actually could have a slash, and then it'll either have a P, capital B, little p, or B or little b. And so based on that, and because we wrap this into an integer field, then we're able to get all these as a numeric count. And so then we could actually use this information if we wanted to find things like cost per unit, stuff like that, that you wouldn't have had if you didn't extract out this information. So that's a good example of that one. Now, I also want to show you that match, as David said, can be a very powerful tool when it comes to filtering. So same thing, if we'd gotten to the phone number situation, you would have found that in that other data set I was working with, there were a lot of fields that didn't have phone number in it. And so I could have, used my regular expression as a filter, and I could say, okay, don't give me the nulls, exclude the nulls. But I could also copy that same expression over and use it as a match. And so you'll actually see here in this particular data set, we show you that, is that the, no, this numbers and package, sorry. The match is basically give me the same information but match it on there. So now I'm using that from a filter perspective. Another thing is URLs, which we've already talked about. You saw in the Google Analytics The next thing you might want to do is if you're doing any kind of IT log data from that perspective. So if you're doing things like looking at log information, you want to extract out dates, you want to extract out seconds, things of that nature. So this particular one, I can actually wrap in a date parse. So if you look at it here from this perspective, show it to you real quick, you can actually see that there is my extract, and it's wrapped in a date parse. So I can actually extract it out, convert it to a date field, and be able to use that. Same thing if I'm looking at extracting seconds. I can actually come over here and take a look at time. And same thing, if you see that, I can get the log information, and I'm looking for something that actually is a pattern for seconds. The person asked about Google. You'll find patterns out there for MAC addresses. You'll find patterns for, and if you didn't know, you could then match a portion of the MAC address to another table that would give you the manufacturer of that information. You'll be able to extract out information like geocodes and things of that nature. And then the final thing that David showed in his demo that I want to just kind of hit on is what the replace could do. So again, in Superstore, if you did not know this, there is actually a setup where there's a hyphenated last name in there. And so if I actually go in there, you can see that I've got an extract, but I then want to go ahead and replace that information and take that hyphen out. So I can do a lot of different things from that perspective. So apologize that the demo was a little bumpy. I'm not really sure what happened there with my data set. I did an extract. I was really happy it was working like about 10 minutes ago. But I guess as these things happen, they just happen. So with that, I'm going to invite David back up. Yeah.
John, are there some cool examples of things
yeah.
that people might do?
Yeah. So let me show you a couple of things here from a dashboard perspective. So if I go here, cancel out of that. Close this, and open.
Well, if you don't have them.
Yeah, I had them here. I guess it just that whole drive dropped out when whatever happened. So. But yeah, there's a number of different things like being able to do really kind of cool dashboards where you're looking again at web traffic between different things, stuff like that, all the kind of stuff you could do from a regular expression perspective. So with that, I'm going to actually have David come back up. I'll do the mic for the Q&A, and we will switch over to you.
All right, so a couple of cleanup items with regular expressions. I went on vacation a couple of years ago to Hot Springs and found something there that reminded me of regular expressions and how regular expressions can give you a lot of power and also be a lot of fun. So these are the supported data sources that Tableau does regular expressions on. So everything from text files in Excel, Postgres, Oracle, Google BigQuery, Teradata. And then for those that Tableau doesn't have regular expressions for, you actually have the ability to do a Tableau extract. So if you do a Tableau extract, you can issue regular expressions against the extract if you're going against a different data source than what you see. So here are some additional resources. There are resources all over the web about regular expressions. There are a couple of really great blogs on how to use Tableau with regular expressions. There is a tutorial, several tutorials on how to step through regular expressions. And there are regular expressions testers so that you can start writing your regular expression and see what the results might be. Now, of course, in Tableau, if you drag it onto the field like John was doing, you can see very quickly whether it picked something up or not and what those results would be. So you can actually use that as your tester as well. And before Q&A, make sure you fill out your survey. This determines whether this is something that we do again next year. So if you would just fill out your survey on that, we would really appreciate that. And hopefully you'll be using this extra tool in your toolbox. So any questions as we go along? I think we have about 5 minutes for Q&A if you want.
Okay, yep, I got the microphone right here. Oops, I think I need to turn mine off. Okay.
Will SQL Server be supported?
SQL Server?
Yeah. For a live connection?
I am not sure about that. It hasn't, the regular expressions have been out for about 3 years. It hasn't yet, and I believe it has to do with the fact that there's a different standard that they use for those regular expressions. So I haven't seen it. It's something that they're always talking about. I just don't know where it is on the priority list at the moment. But in that case, like I said, you can always use extracts. And then in Hyper, I would suspect that you'll be able to do it with Hyper as well.
Other?
The question was, will we ever support
Support
SQL Server?
SQL. Sorry, this is getting loud.
SQL Server.
Okay, did somebody else have a question? Yep.
So, have you guys had a chance to do some of these things in Hyper and test performance and speed between the two?
Part of my demo was actually in the setting out. I'll do my regular. Yeah, part of that demo was actually in Hyper, and that might have been part of the problem. But it was working, I promise it was working. David even saw it working, so
Yes.
he's my witness. Okay, other questions?
But
one more?
It should be faster in Hyper because you're working in memory, especially on larger data sets.
Hi there. So best practice-wise, if let's say I'm going to take a crack at it, so let's say recognizing that there could be different convention in terms of last name or phone numbers, like parentheses around the first 3 digits or hyphens. For each of these potential scenarios, so do we set up a separate regular expression for each one of them?
Actually, I can answer that one. So when you get the workbook, and we'll make sure we'll even put these in the slides, the one for the phone number that I didn't get a chance to show you had a phone number in a format with parentheses, space, number, dash, number. Then it was phone number, area code, dash, 3 digits, dash, 3 digits. And then it was phone number with periods in between. And so you can nest those in there. So you can say, okay, I'm looking for this, or this, or this. Does that answer your question? David, you can tell me your opinion. I would do it.
Nesting as opposed to create separate calculated fields, was that the question? In general, it doesn't matter from a performance standpoint. Tableau ends up nesting them anyway. But often when you create calculated fields and want to do nested calculated fields, it's easy to logically think about it if you break it into certain parts, and especially if you want them to be reusable. So often I do that rather than build one long calculation just for ease of use and reusability. But performance-wise, it doesn't make a difference.
Next question. We got like 1 or 2 more questions if anybody. And thank you for staying until the end.
Okay, well thank you
All right.
everyone for coming to Regular Expressions.
You guys all have a safe trip home.